Doing Dyslexia Differently, where we unravel the many facets of dyslexia in small, digestible bites, challenge stereotypes, and create a brighter future for our children. We'll focus on fostering your child's mindset, confidence, and self-esteem so they can reach their full potential in and out of the classroom. Let's challenge the status quo, break down the barriers, and unravel the spectrum of possibilities. I'm your host, Bernadette Haig, and together we can do dyslexia differently. Let's get started. Hello and welcome to the Doing Dyslexia Differently podcast. I'm your host, Bernadette, and I'm so happy to have you here. I really hope that you're able to take something away from this episode that will help both you and your child on your dyslexia journey. Today, I want to cover off some practical ways that we can help build our children's self-esteem. Now, when I talk about self-esteem, I'm talking about one's overall opinion of themselves, their beliefs about their abilities and or their limitations. I guess when we look at our children with dyslexia, there are considerable reasons why so many of them will struggle with self-esteem well into their adulthood. And I believe a major contributor is the early years spent feeling incompetent, inadequate, because they don't fit into the mainstream learning box. But I think there's really things that we can do at home or in therapies that can help foster this sense of self-esteem and bolster that foundation for our children. So let's dive in. I think the first thing that I'm really conscious of for myself and my son is making sure that he hears me consistently speak about him and his abilities highly to others. Whether it be the effort he's putting into his work, his strengths, whether it be in sporting or creative pursuits, but also his character, his kindness, his generosity, how he shows up for people in his life. And I think it's not just saying things because you think they're listening. It's even talking about when they're not listening. And whilst I understand as a parent, you have concerns and there may be hesitations about what their future outcomes will be. And you, by all means, have those conversations in private. But I really think, and from my own experience as a child growing up undiagnosed, I was privy to a lot of adult conversations about myself and my learning. And the narratives were, she's slow. She may or may not catch up. She needs to put more effort in. She needs to work harder. None of that for me was empowering, and I can't say any of it really helped with building my self-confidence or self-esteem. So I think it's just being really selective about when you have those kind of conversations, but also choosing a positive outlook and really understanding that with the right support and the right strategies, your child will reach their full potential. The next one is avoiding all forms of comparison and shaming. And this is a tricky one because it happens everywhere and it most definitely happens in our classrooms. To give you a few examples, I think I often hear in the community and see myself things like parents saying, your brother can do it, why can't you? You should know that by now. That's not age appropriate. Or in a classroom environment, I had one just the other day where a parent had told me their son's reading level was publicly displayed on a chart. So every student in the classroom in year 2 had their reading level on like a growth chart. Needless to say, him being dyslexic and not getting the support he needed, he was on the very bottom of that chart. That's just a form of public shaming. I really don't see any benefit for the child at the top of that chart or for the child at the bottom of that chart being compared against their peers. I think this also comes in the form of report cards. I, for one, personally have never shared a report card with my son. I sit down and I discuss the commentary of what teachers have said about his effort, about his character, but never about what the academic outcomes are based on other students' averages or norms. I think that's irrelevant to him. I'm only ever looking to see where the growth is against his own growth. So where he was at the beginning of the year, where he is at the end of the year. And that's what we look at. That's what we celebrate. It's not about where the system thinks he should be. And I think that sort of leads me into the next point, which is releasing your own expectations based on social norms, averages, or neurotypical testing. Our children are consistently tested in mainstream school environments based on neurotypical testing. They're not being tested for their strengths. They are being tested in areas that are challenging. And if they're not being taught with the right strategies, it's unfair. They're not being given a fair advantage or a fair go even. It's not an advantage. So I'm sure if the tables were turned and incredibly creative and intelligent dyslexic children were tested for out-of-the-box thinking and creative pursuits and imagination and those kind of things against some of their neurotypical peers, the results would be highly different. So I think it's really trying to put all of that down and just look at, where is my child at? Where do we want my child to be? And what is the strategy to get them there, and really stop the comparison game. It really isn't going to help anyone, and it's certainly not going to help your child if they sense that you feel they're so behind and it's causing you anxiety. That is only going to further bring down that kind of confidence and self-esteem. The next point would be allowing them some agency and choice, freedom to choose in their own life. And this can come in a variety of forms. I really saw a couple of years ago, my son was in up to 10 hours of additional learning outside of school classroom learning a week. So he was doing the MacLit program, he was in speech therapy, he was in OT, he was then doing remedial classes at school. It was so much, and he really didn't have agency or choice over any of that. It had to happen. He was falling further and further behind, and it really felt to me like the only option to support him. But in that, realizing that there was no choice, I really tried to give him the choice in other areas of his life, whether that be what sports he was playing, what friends he wanted to see on the weekends, how he wanted to spend his weekends. He can be quite introverted at times, so having the space and time to be on his own. He would often play for hours in his room on his own as a form of recharge. He really seeks that solitude when he's feeling overwhelmed. So giving choice of that, it can be as simple as choice of food, the choice of clothes. For me, this kind of comes very easily, wear whatever you like, but I know that there are some parents that are quite particular about how their children present themselves in the outside world. But offering those kind of choices can just alleviate some of that stress that comes with the things that they don't have a choice over, like going to additional therapies and those kind of things. And I think the more agency they feel like they have over their life, the more that starts to build their self-esteem as well. I think that's really, really important. And I think the last thing, and I speak about this lots, is really knowing your child's difference, how dyslexia impacts them. It does work on a continuum, and symptoms and challenges vary from person to person. So really understanding your child, understanding what works for them, what doesn't, and this comes through trial and error. It takes time and a hell of a lot of patience. I totally understand that. But speaking about all of that with a positive attitude and a forward thinking, we know what we're doing, we know where we're going. I see you, I've got you, I believe in you. Because ultimately what a child believes to be true about themselves is what they'll become. So the more positively we can speak about the dyslexic difference, the more positive they can start to feel about it. And that is only ever going to bring them success in the future. So they are my top sort of 5 tips today for helping build self-esteem. Hope this helps. I hope there's something that you can take away and implement as well. And as always, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out on social media or via email. We'll chat again soon. Thanks for listening. I hope you were able to take something away from this episode that will help both you and your child. If so, please be sure to subscribe to stay up to date with new episodes, and jump over to daringdyslexic.com.au to join my free community, where each week I send you one practical action you can take to shift the dial on your child's confidence, self-esteem and mindset. It's 100% free and 100% actionable. That's all for now. I look forward to connecting again soon.